So Tracy, please take it away.
Hi, my name is Tracy Wallace. I am the ADA Compliance Coordinator. I'd just like to begin with, at Independent Living, our mission is a consumer-directed cross-disability advocacy and service organization dedicated to enhancing the quality of life for people with disabilities. Our vision is a barrier-free society with opportunities for all people to achieve their maximum potential. As the ADA Compliance Coordinator, I work with organizations and people with disabilities and municipalities to remove barriers. And how do we do that is with training and ADA accessibility reviews, which includes an ADA accessibility or an accessibility review would mean that I would go to your organization and we measure the bathrooms to ensure that the doors are wide enough and your office space, your desks are high enough or low enough to accommodate people with disabilities. So this training is going to, so disability language and disability language and etiquette and effective communication training for library staff today is essential training to ensure that libraries are inclusive and accessible to all individuals, including those with different disabilities, with various disabilities.
Tracy, just 1 second. Everyone,
sure.
Is the slides advancing for people? I just want to make sure. Are you what slide are you on right now, Tracy?
Now I can hear you. I'm sorry, I missed it.
That's okay. What slide are you on? I just want to make sure that the slides are advancing for everyone. Did you?
I'm on facts and figures.
Okay.
Slide 2.
Slide 2. Okay. So everybody's still on the first slide still currently?
No. Thank you, Stephanie.
Yeah.
On here, kind of.
Okay, so if
on the second slide?
So she advanced to the second slide. Perhaps at the bottom, let's see, let's sync to presenter. Did everybody see the sync to presenter? Now you're on the second slide? Okay, I think we got it. All right, let's give it a go. Where everybody should be seeing the second slide that says some facts and figures to start. If you are not seeing that at the bottom, it should say synced presenter. If the little pop-up, you should be able to click that and then it'll sync with Tracy. If you have anything, let me know in the chat and we'll try to work it out behind the scenes.
Thank you. So some facts and figures to start. The National Organization on Disability reports that more than 85.3 million Americans are living with a disability. The CDC states that more than 1 in 4 or over 70 million adults in the United States have a disability. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, the unemployment rate for people with disabilities is double that of people without a disability. Individuals with disabilities are twice as likely to live below poverty line than those without a disability, and people with disabilities are the largest minority group in the United States and the only minority group that anyone can join at any time. It affects people of all ages, genders, and ethnic and cultural backgrounds. So when we say anyone can join at any time, for example, I was not born with a disability. I was in a car accident when I was 16. So I do know how how I navigated the world when I thought they were barrier free. And then when I had my spinal cord injury, and now I see the barriers that people with disability face. So it's a different perspective. I'm gonna go to the next slide. People with disabilities, is everyone on the next slide before I go to the next? Is everyone on slide 3? People with disabilities face challenges. Okay.
Looks like, yep, it looks good. Okay, we should be good. Yay.
Okay. People with disabilities face challenges, including stigma, stereotypes, and discrimination, underemployment, access to public transportation, and access to healthcare. Etiquette and language can help halt the stigma, stereotypes, and discrimination and underemployment. In order for people to feel empowered, they need to be treated as such by using positive encouragement and breaking down attitudinal barriers. connection is going in and out. We can avoid discouraging people from feeling that they are not worthy or able to be productive members of society. Is everyone connected? Yes. So this, an example would be attitudinal barriers stop me from being productive in my community because I'm a parent of 4 kids, and sometimes people see, you know, a mom in a wheelchair and they think, well, she's, you know, not capable of doing certain things because of our, you know, stereotyping and stigmas. But in fact, when you see me in my community, I'm very, very active with my kids, and I do a lot. And when we have accessibility, when we have everything accessible, like, you know, where I'm able to get into a building and go with the children, you could see that, you know, I'm just as active as any other parent. That's just an example. Moving to the next slide. Why disability language and etiquette? It provides basic ways to respectfully communicate with and about people with disabilities from the moment you meet them. Disability language and etiquette is about using respectful and inclusive terms while interacting with individuals who have disabilities, as well as ensuring that our actions reflect an understanding of their needs. All right, making communication the priority, and disability language and etiquette at its core is about dignity and respect. Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA. The Americans with Disabilities Act prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities, provides civil rights protections to individuals with disabilities, and covers areas such as jobs, schools, transportation, and public places. It was signed in July 26, 1990 by George H.W. Bush. And so the ADA protects people with disabilities. Turn the other way. Definition of a disability. According to the Department of Justice, to be covered under the ADA, one must have a disability or be associated with an individual with a disability, or an individual that is regarded as having a disability. A person who has physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activity, a person who has a history or record of such impairment, or a person who is perceived by others as having such an impairment. Go to the next slide. Use language that empowers. So when we use language that empowers, we want to use positive, empowering language that reflects the individuality, equality, and dignity of that person. It avoids using labels to define someone. We oftentimes, for example, we use the word special for people with disabilities, but instead we can say people of all abilities, with all abilities. That's an example as well. Using person-first language. So using person-first language is the way someone identifies as the way that they want to identify, which oftentimes what we really say is you can ask the person how they would like to identify themselves. Sometimes it's not which language to use. Are we all on the same slide? Just checking. So person first would be, example would be, I am a person who is blind or who has low vision. Instead of saying I am blind, I'm a person with autism, as opposed to I am autistic. But I actually have a daughter that's on the spectrum who is proud to say that she has autism, and she says, no, I am autistic. So some people do like to use identity first, but oftentimes use person first. Again, it's if you don't know which one to use, you can always ask the person. Words that hold power. So there are outdated words. I definitely grew up with a lot of outdated words, even words that I didn't know were outdated that I thought to call people. I'm realizing and learning as we learn, working with people with disabilities and independent living and in our communities, that we have outdated in this
Tracy,
slide would be, yeah.
Tracy, I'm sorry to interrupt again. Your mic just keeps cutting in and out. So I just don't know if you can see that on your end, but we're losing some words here and there. So just, I wanted to make you aware of what's happening on our end, just so that you know, maybe if you see something like an unstable connection, just to kind of go over what you said again, just because we might have missed
Okay.
it. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So words that hold power. So these are words that maybe you've grown up with. I know I grew up, I'm showing my age, I grew up in the 80s, 90s. My parents and our community, we used labels. Oftentimes our parents or grandparents didn't know, just describe people as they thought and didn't know they were offending anyone, but in fact it does. So we want to be very current with what we say and how we communicate with people with disabilities. So as we look at this chart, you can see outdated words such as handicap, physically challenged, crippled, addict, the R word. So the R word was used a lot, especially with even in the media. This was used. There was a facility in the United States, and it had the word retarded in there. That's the R word. I'm even hesitant to say it. Even my kids say, "Oh, the R word," because we're very we want to make aware that these words are just not nice to use. It hinders the person, of course. So what we want to use is person with a disability, person with a substance use disorder, person with a developmental disability, and of course, there are people with non-apparent disabilities, and that's people with disabilities that you can't physically see. So if people that are walking around may have a disability, but you can't see their disability. So we used to say invisible disability, but they're not invisible, right? So we call it now non-apparent disabilities. And of course, person with a mental illness as opposed to crazy psycho-disturbed, we know that those are wrong, but we want to still make that aware that to use proper language. Basic etiquette for asking: ask first and don't make assumptions. So every person with a disability is an individual, and it's important to engage with them on their own terms. Asking people how they prefer to be addressed or assisted shows respect and awareness. Never assume that every person with a disability needs assistance, and only offer assistance if someone appears to need it. So grabbing them can knock them off balance, so you want to ask them. And even if it appears that they may need assistance, we can't make assumptions. We have to ask first. So that's moving along to mobility disability. So when possible, speak to the person at their eye level. Of course, do not touch the person's mobility device, as it is a part of their personal space. And this goes for a mobility device, whether it's a cane, a walker, a wheelchair, or a service animal. I oftentimes tell my children that, why do we not touch a service animal? And I teach them they are doing a job, right? They are working. The service animal is working to keep that person safe, to guide that person, and we don't want to distract the service animal because it could harm that person. It could throw the person off. It could put the person in the wrong direction of where they need to go. So we really want to just be mindful when we see a service animal, not to distract them in any way. Intellectual and developmental disabilities. Sorry, just want to make sure we're on the same slide. Move my slides over. 1 second. Okay, and I can't. Okay. So intellectual and developmental disabilities. So we want to be patient and let the individual set their pace. To communicate most effectively, we want to use easy to understand wording and visual aids where needed, and break down ideas into smaller parts. When giving instructions for a task, you may need to write them down, but always ask the individual first and don't assume. We have to be patient and let the individual set its pace. Some people will need time to adjust instead of moving from one subject to another. They're processing information. You could take your time to listen to them, as well as take your time giving instructions, and take taking your time when you're communicating. Be sure that you're understood. You may have to repeat or rephrase when necessary. I know I say this all the time. I have 4 children, and sometimes one child can pick up what I'm saying, where someone else, you may need to change the way in which you communicate. And so you could ask them, did they understand? Do you need to repeat it or rephrase it? You can always ask. If you think that they may not know what your directions are when you're in library staff. So when you're in a program where you're addressing everyone, and you could ask, do you need me to rephrase or redirect you? That's always a better way to communicate, so that everyone is included in that conversation, instead of taking away that person and saying it. You can say it differently, or in a different in a more simpler way, if you feel that you may have someone in the group that may need the explanation a little different. So for visual disability, so when you have someone with a visual disability, you want to introduce yourself, speak clearly. So I would be, hi, my name is Tracy. I have blonde hair. I'm wearing a red shirt. I have black glasses. I have glasses on with black frames. And you want to speak very clearly, and speak in a normal tone, normal volume, and you can announce yourself. So when you enter a room, we have to also be mindful of when we say this, right? So when you're in a room, sorry, I saw the hold. I saw a pause. So when you're on a panel discussing with a group, it is good to describe yourself. If you may think there was someone with a visual disability, you want to speak very clearly so that they know where you are in the room, so they know who they're talking to. Let me go down. I'm sorry, hold on. Oops. Okay. Okay, so it is okay to offer to read information to someone and be respectful of their answer, right? So some people might have low vision, not necessarily cannot see. Some people have low vision. So you can offer to read someone and be respectful of their answer, or offer some may request large print materials. So let me go down. Okay, and then when you're in your room, if you move any of your furniture, it is really a good practice to let the person know with the vision disability. So if you have a group of people that may come on Mondays or Tuesdays, or you have a group of people that are coming in and you moved your furniture, it's good to let that person know that you moved the furniture and where it's moved, because they're used to the space being in a certain manner, in a certain way, and it could be very distracting and difficult for them to be able to access the resources or access where you are. If you moved your desk, if you moved the chair, if you have moved to where your water access is, your water stations, your office of any kind, it's good to let them know about your surroundings if you changed anything. Hearing disability. Okay, so when we say speak clearly when a hearing disability, because some people with the hearing disability can read lips, but don't assume everyone can read lips. But when we speak clearly and slowly and face the person, when they have a hearing disability, they can read lips. Some people can read lips. So when we say speak clearly, I want to be very clear about what that means. And then minimize background noise, as sometimes it does give off some vibrations that could throw the person off as well. And use visual cues, rephrase or write things down. So you may not have an interpreter on hand, but you can write things down as a form of communication. To gain a person's attention, you can put yourself in their line of vision and wave your hand. It's not rude to wave. It is not rude to wave. You're getting their attention so that you can focus them. I saw it pause. I'm going to say it again because I saw it pause. When you're, for example, we go to the library and you're conducting a program and you're about to present or you're about to start your movie or what you're presenting. So you can wave to them so that you can get their attention so that they can focus on you so they know you're getting ready. Because when you go to use the microphone or when you're presenting to a larger crowd or to a community, they're not going to hear on the microphone when you're able to start. So you can wave and get their attention beforehand. Again, with the hearing disability, it doesn't necessarily have to be that they could have some hearing. When they do have an interpreter, I do want to be mindful when they do have an interpreter or an assistant with them, you want to make sure that you're looking at the person that you are speaking with. When I first worked independent living, we have someone here that uses an interpreter, and sometimes I would look at the interpreter because we're used to looking at the person that we're speaking with, right? So we're used to having contact with someone that you're speaking to. But with this interpreter or the assistant, you're speaking with the person, not the interpreter. So we want to make sure that you are looking at the person when you are talking to them, even though the interpreter with them is interpreting what you're saying, you are speaking to them. This also is being mindful that you are giving them the attention and not the interpreter or their assistant the attention. Speech disability. So be patient and wait for the person to finish speaking. Don't interrupt. Ask one question at a time and allow the person to answer. So I know many people with disabilities who have speech disabilities, and it takes them some time to answer. And sometimes we think we want to help, right? And so we say, "Oh, let me help them. I know what they're going to say. Let me help them finish their sentence," because it looks, from your point of view, it looks, well, maybe difficult, maybe it's hard for them to speak, and you think you're helping, but in fact, it makes the person feel feel bad about themselves because you're not letting them finish. You're not listening to them. You're not, valuing what they have to say. You're not holding them to value as much as, as I can communicate with you. Even though it's hard for them to communicate, they know what they want to say. They know what the message they do want to send you. So it's a good practice to be patient and wait for the person and don't interrupt them. And ask one question at a time. So oftentimes we have, I'm also a member of Think Differently, which is great in Orange County. Has great ideas and she's very smart. And sometimes I've seen people ask her a question and walk away and while she was still talking. And I saw how it really hurt her feelings. And I also see people that ask multiple questions and she wants to answer you, but it takes some time. It just takes a little bit more time. So we want to be patient and we want to just wait for that person to be able to answer one question at a time or one thought at a time. And just be mindful when you have someone with a speech disability. The person may use assistive technology. So we want to be mindful of that as well. Some people have different electronic communications, which we'll be getting into. Not diving too deep into this session, into this part one. We do have a part two where we'll be diving a little deeper into electronic communication, but sometimes people do have assistive technology, and that also takes patience when communicating. Neurodiversity. So a term used to describe people whose brains, again, process information just differently, right? So people with autism, ADHD, those PTSD, and people with learning disabilities such as dyslexia. So this chart describes communication that could be helpful and mindful when working with someone who has autism on the spectrum or ADHD. So instead of saying they have a deficit, we could say they have a difference. Instead of impairment, we could say affirming language would be traits. Disruptive behavior, it could be communication challenges. Inflexible, rigid, needs routine. Avoids eye contact, prefers indirect gaze. I have a daughter on the spectrum, and early on, she's 20 now, but when she was young, it does look like she's not listening, she's not paying attention, she's all over the place. But when you use affirmative communication, needs routine, and put someone on routine, indirect gaze does not mean that they're ignoring you. It means that they may not be able to look straight at you, but they are listening. So we want to be mindful of these things and mindful in the way we communicate with people that don't always act the same as everyone else, which is neurodiversity is, again, a non-apparent disability that it's hard to see because a lot of people that are on the spectrum or have different disabilities you can't see, which is now segmenting into my next slide, which is non-apparent disabilities. So non-apparent disabilities, again, as the picture shows, some disabilities you can tell, crutches, walkers, wheelchairs, canes, a service animal, all of these are visual. We can visually see these disabilities, but there are many, 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 many that are non-apparent. And this includes learning disabilities, mental illness, chronic conditions, degenerative diseases. This includes many, many different a lot in this category of non-apparent disabilities. And what we want to be really mindful of when we communicate with people is that we can't predict what they have. And so I would just make an example of when you park, right? When you park and you see someone with an accessible, or you say handicap, we try to get away from handicap. We want to say accessible parking. So the accessible parking passes are on people's cars, and then you see someone just get out and walk. And then some people get upset, and like, what is this person doing taking up this spot? Or people that really need this. But we don't know that, right? Because they could have a non-apparent disability. They could have a muscular, issues that may not be acting up on a sunny day, but on a cold day, they might not be able to walk far, or they just need to be closer for any reason. So we want to be very mindful, right? When we see someone that has a need, we can't predict. Right. So we just want to be very mindful that there are people with non-apparent disabilities, and they don't have to disclose. They don't have to disclose their disability. But as long as we can communicate in a meaningful, respectful manner, then we can be welcoming, right? So moving on to accessibility. Didn't move on. Hold on. Effective communication. So effective communication, the goal is to ensure that communicating with people with disabilities is equally effective as communicating with people without disabilities. So different forms of effective communication are large, print, and braille. Assistive technology and devices, hearing loops, and other assistive devices. What is a hearing loop? You ever seen, it's like I know it's back in the day, like earphones, an assistive device. Those are hearing loops of different types of technology that we won't, I'm just going to run through the basics of effective communication, but again, part 2 is really going to go a little deeper dive into effective communication. So for today, we will just go over screen readers, ASL, and other interpretation services. So VRIs. So VRI is a video ASL. So an ASL takes time. Sometimes it takes a few weeks or a few days in order to get an ASL interpreter. So we want to be mindful of that. So if we're having an event, right, or you have a program that you're setting up that you know about, and say, maybe you want to put out on your flyer, if there's anyone that may need an interpreter, please let us know so that we have enough time to get the interpreter. On when you're communicating, whether it's on the website or on your flyer, or when you're communicating with your community, and say, hey, thank you for coming to our program. And our next program, we are going to have this at a later date. So, okay, at this later time, if anyone needs an ASL interpreter, please let us know. We can definitely set that up for you, but it takes time to set that up. So we don't expect the libraries to have an ASL interpreter on hand, but definitely have that option out there for anyone that may need it for any of your programs. Be able to communicate with your staff so that you can make sure that those services are there when needed. Telecom and relay services. The reason why I put this on here for effective communication is because sometimes when we pick up the phone and someone is using TTY, what is that, right? So someone is texting on their end, and the operator is then reading what they're texting, and then they're telling you what they're texting. And so it's not as fast as I'm communicating with you, right? So you have to wait for someone to type, and then the operator then speaks. So that takes time and patience. So I put it on here because when we are talking about effective communication and people with disabilities, they use different ways in order to contact you. So you may have this via telephone when they're calling you about, I know I call the library oftentimes to see what passes you have available for museums, or, what, programs are you having in your summer or winter, or, and some people use the TTY service. So I'm just being mindful and saying, if you do come across that, just be mindful that to be patient, because text to talk is not as quick. Electronic communication. So electronic communication is assistive technology, screen readers and magnifiers, adaptive devices. So libraries, so again, this is just telling you some electronic communication with assistive technology, accessible digital content, web accessibility, ebooks. So if they have screen readers, magnifiers, and they use, sorry, I'm going through my notes. So magnifiers and text-to-speech software and adaptive devices, accessible digital content. And again, we're not going to really get into this deeper. We're just really just talking about accessible communication. So having web accessibility, ebooks, downloaded books, audio books, different types of electronic communication people with disabilities use, or at libraries. So we're just saying when people use different types of technology. Inclusive programs. So programming for individuals with disabilities that inclusive programs are programs that where everyone feels included, right? So I'm going to give you an example. I have 4 kids. I had mentioned I have 4 kids, right? So I have 2 daughters and 2 sons. So I have one daughter on the spectrum, she's 20, and one that's 18, that's not on the spectrum, that doesn't have ADHD or anything, right? So when I brought her to the library, we have a library that we absolutely love. And even today, your programs are awesome for kids. We absolutely love them. But when they were really little, they had an art program. It was a reading program followed by arts and crafts. So the librarian read a book, and then the children did arts and crafts based on that book, and that was something that was offered. So I had one daughter who was able to sit through the reading and able to understand, and I have another daughter that was just couldn't sit still, walking around, distracting the kids, just going back and forth. And we realized that when we gave her something sensory, like something to hold in her hand that she was able to squish, she was able to listen. She was able to follow the book. She was able to follow the librarian and listen and not distract anyone. So that's just an example right, of having inclusive programs where you can have sensory objects maybe in to be inclusive for everyone, right? So we're not saying to isolate anyone. We're saying that you can have things, sensory things in your class where anyone can pick it up and use and say, hey, we have these in case somebody needs it, so that everyone can enjoy your reading, everyone can enjoy your program, can sit there and be together. So some sensory friendly programs include like de-escalate, it's engaging, soothing. Again, sign language interpreters are in here because when you're creating, again, inclusive programs, you made it an interpreter, so that's why this is there. And sensory rooms, quiet and lightly dim. So you can also offer people that may, if they ask you and say, hey, I feel overwhelmed, or, you can ask them, oh, do you feel overwhelmed? Or you notice someone feeling overwhelmed? You can create a sensory room where people can read on their own. This is a place where where they can read, right? Where maybe there's in the children's section, it's loud, or maybe they have a group or school group or someone there, and you have another room or another space, not even another room, or a space that's, lightly dimmed and quiet, because sometimes, this, not even something, this can de-escalate people that are on, kids that are on the spectrum that may have sensory overload. And disability and communication, this is the key to be adaptable, respectable, and open to learning about the unique needs of the person. Libraries can foster an inclusive environment. And that is the ends of our presentation. I hope it was clear and everyone didn't pause. If there's any questions, I can certainly answer any questions.
Thank you, Tracy. So yes, if anybody would like to, you could either, I'm monitoring the chat, so you could drop your questions in the chat, or if you would like to unmute at this time, you can, either raise your hand or just unmute and ask your question. I know I have a few, but I'm going to give everybody a chance to jump in if they had anything that they were, writing down, or maybe that they missed.
You could always email me at any time you have a question or something arises as well, because oftentimes that happens too, until something arises and then you're like, you could always email me.
One thing I did want to ask Tracy, I know you just said they could email you, but is there a resource that you would recommend to library staff or library, people who are working in the library for updated language? Any good links or resources that would be helpful?
I don't have them on me, but I could certainly, if you email me, I can certainly send those resources to you. I don't have them on hand, but I can certainly send you those resources, and then we can share them.
Certainly, if you want, I was going to say, if you want to send them along with maybe the PDF of the slides, then we can share that all together. That would be great.
Yes, I certainly can send resources and the slides to you.
Yeah. Just to recap, another question that I kind of wanted to bring up is, what is the most acceptable way to find out if someone has a disability if you're unsure? Is there a question or a way to ask, or should we just let that person take the lead?
So I get this question asked from HR, usually at organizations. And what we say is, you can always say what we offer. If you think that someone is hesitant to say their disability, you can say, in general, we offer sensory space. We offer larger print books. We offer, you can always say what the library offers, and then that can usually let down someone's guard so that they can make that, and then they can say, oh, well, I would need this. Or you could say, this is what we offer, and anything else that we don't offer, we can certainly assist you with if the person, if you think that the person doesn't want to disclose. So that's often the advice I give. When they see that when people with disabilities see that you're being inclusive and you have all of these things offered, it usually makes people feel safe enough to speak. And you can ask questions, but sometimes it's, people get offended if you ask them to predict or assume that someone has a disability. So I would go with offering what you have available or what you can get them for resources. Like if you don't have Braille books in your library, you can say, we have large print books, but if you need Braille, we can certainly order them for you. Or, you can share what you have.
Thank you. That's good information. I appreciate that. Again, if anybody has anything and they don't want to unmute, if they want to throw it in the chat, they can, if something's popping up. But I will ask another thing, just kind of along the line of resources. Are there resources locally for finding ASL interpreters, as you suggested? If you don't have them on hand, can you include those as well?
I have a few in my community, but I'm going to certainly email you with that information. I know MHIS is one. So I will definitely get you that information for those resources, ASL interpreters. But I know that your libraries are spaced out in different areas of Orange County. So I want to be mindful of that before I say one service, and then that service only includes this many service. So that's why I was hesitant. But I know MHIS is one, but I don't know what their range is and how, where your library spread on Ulster or other counties.
Right. Yeah, we have the 4 counties. So Sullivan,
right.
Ulster, Orange, and Rockland. Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's, I know that the one spreads out. I don't know how much to how many counties, but we certainly do have that information. But again, I can email you that information as well.
Great. Thank you. And just to let everybody know, if you have a library that has one of the Translate Live devices that have we just sent those out, and there is an ASL option on that Translate Live, which is, it's basically, kind of like 2 iPads together, speak into one, and it puts a interpreter kind of on there. I haven't tested it. I know Jen was talking about it, so I'll be interested if any of you at your libraries have used that feature, just to see how that works. That was something that I kind of popped into my head as I was listening to Tracy talk.
That's great. That's great to know that your library has it. That's great.
Okay, well, I'm not seeing anybody putting anything in the chat, so I'm going to ask one last question before we wrap it up. So if you had, obviously libraries have, more limited resources, as all nonprofits do, and things like that. If there was kind of one thing that you would suggest that or recommend to all libraries basically for enhancing communication, is there something that, it's kind of like, do not leave home without it, kind of a tool or something that would be good for the libraries to take away?
Well, I do sometimes refer to the basics as writing notes back and forth. But a specific tool, because there's such a broad range of disabilities, that's why it's hard to pinpoint a certain tool, but definitely just be mindful and respectful. And I think a big takeaway from this would be to be mindful that when you're being inclusive, that we are integrating everyone into one space. So be mindful that we're not isolating or excluding, but we're being inclusive and mindful in the way we communicate. So I guess the basic tool would be to be if you don't have anything on hand, you know, always visual is always good as well, with the writing notes.
Gotcha. And I think too, I think one of the biggest takeaways is also patrons or patients, right? Like making sure that you keep your patients in check, and I think a lot of us tend to want to fill the empty space with words. And so I think that's another thing to really be mindful. So just in the chat, Kristen put in, if any library staff currently hosts sensory-friendly programs or rooms and have advice, I'd love to hear. So she put her email in there. So again, if you you know, have anything that you are doing at your libraries that are working really well, you can either share them directly with Kristen, or if you want to share them with me, and then I can put that again part of the package after this is all cleaned up, the recording is cleaned up and everything, and when I send that out to our attendees, I can include that as well. So if you are letting Kristen know about anything, let me know too, and I will put it together as a nice complete package as part of the follow-up for this particular presentation. All right, everybody. Well, I thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you got some good tips and tools that you can take to your libraries. We will be obviously sending the follow-up for this in the next day or so. And there will be a part 2 coming out, as Tracy alluded to. That is going to be on June 9th. And so it is on the RCLS calendar. You can sign up for that right now if you'd like. And we hopefully will see you again for something like that. And then there also will be an evaluation sent out. So again, if you could take 2 minutes and fill that out, it helps us out here at RCLS. And I think that might be it for today. Again, thank you for your patience putting up with my buzzing. We are going to work on getting it fixed. And thank you so much to Tracy for joining us today and giving us all this wonderful information.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Take care, everyone. We'll see you soon.